give people a chance to just get to know one another. And the second time each week, I want to do a video to give you a chance to meet newer people in the church as well. So just to give people a chance to do that. And I asked Barbara if she would to come in and let's just have a conversation and talk about her life and just her history and you know we certainly want to very important to us to hear about your spiritual history as well. You know how you got to Westport and that spiritual journey that God has brought you through to this point, and you know what Westport means to you and so forth. So we'll just have a conversation. You know, we don't have a lot of notes or anything. I've got a few questions I've written down in case I get stuck or something. But anyway, Barbara, why don't we just start out? Why don't you tell us a little bit about just where you were born and you know just your life, the kind of the Reader's Digest version of your life story.
I was born in 1939, the youngest of 4 children. I have a sister 8 years older, a brother 5 years older, and a brother 4 years older. The sister's still living. My 2 brothers are deceased.
Mm-hmm.
So, being the youngest in the family, 4 years apart, I had that time with my mom and dad. So I loved being the baby in the
You're
family.
kind of like an only child.
For
Probably
about
thought you had 2 or
years.
3 moms growing up, didn't you?
And,
At first.
And if we went to the store and got ice cream, I would tell them, I went to the store today, but we didn't have any ice cream. So I told on myself.
Yeah.
But anyway, I loved that position in the family, always the baby, until I turned 12. And my sister got married at 20. That means I had 2 teenage brothers dating. Guess who did the ironing for them to date? And I was the permanent dishwasher with the hands, no dishwashing. But anyway, I learned to be a mother's girl because Dad had the 2 boys to fish and do the farming with. I did some farming.
Mm-hmm. Where was this? Where were you growing up?
Northeastern part of North Carolina.
The northeastern part of North Carolina?
Right near, about 45 miles from Suffolk, Virginia.
Okay.
So if you hear a little house in the boat, that's why I've got that little accent.
Okay.
Because I'm still hanging on to a little bit of it.
Okay.
But so I grew up there. Farming is hard, and I knew right away I was not going to marry a farmer.
Any particular type of crops that y'all grew? Or?
Our main crops were tobacco and peanuts.
Okay.
It's formerly known there as the Goober country because we have a lot of peanuts.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'll tell you a little about working in that tobacco.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story real quick about my in-laws, my wife's parents. They're from up in New England, and they after they retired, they moved down to Alabama, where I was pastoring at the time. And my father-in-law loves to tell his story about that somebody asked him one time if he wanted some boiled peanuts.
I love
But the way they said it is, "What, you want some boiled peanuts?" And he's like, "What are bald peanuts?" But he loves to tell that story. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay. But the tobacco, you know, you get the tar on your hands, and
Right.
just like a smoker gets the yellow nicotine. I hated getting dirty. So I knew I wasn't going to marry a farmer, even though I had to do that. But when I got 16, I was dating, you know, and you have the tobacco on your hands that day. You had to get it off with Clorox. Well, you'd go to the date that night, your perfume was the Clorox. So that wasn't too nice.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did enjoy, and I am very proud of where I came from because of the value that was there. And we were poor and didn't know it.
Right.
I don't think we were Dolly Parton poor or, you know, Loretta Lynn like that.
Yeah.
But I always had plenty of country food to eat, had the smokehouse and all this stuff and everything. But my mom and dad were raised in a little town called Coleraine, North Carolina. And that's where they grew up. And so when I was 6 years old, they moved across the county line. Daddy bought a farm. So that meant that I was going to church with one group of children, Sunday school, and to school with another.
Okay.
So as time went on, we did stay at the Coleraine Church, the family, and I did join there when I was 10 years old. And we had to wear white dresses.
So what denomination was that?
Baptist.
Okay.
I've always been a Baptist.
Okay.
And I got baptized in the Chowan River.
In the river.
In the river. I was very nervous.
What was it, cold or was it the summer or what?
I was either cold or nervous, and I don't remember what month it was in.
Okay.
But I was nervous. But I joined there. But after we moved, and I was 6, there was a little neighborhood church they called Christian Harbor Baptist Church. I still remember those people there that just pulled me in there. And my mom didn't have driving license, so they would come and get me for church and stuff like that. I was in the GAs, and I started going there. And my grandfather went there, so he would stop and pick me up. So I was pulling from the family to go to that church because it meant so much to me. And
this was in the new county?
This was in the new county.
Okay.
The county line was on the road we lived on.
Right, okay.
Rural.
Okay.
So when I was 15, we always, little towns like that, you attend everybody's revival.
Right.
So we went to the revival, and I was about 15 years old. I don't know how I got down the aisle, but I was there crying like a baby. That's when I knew I'm a Christian. And that church, I will never forget those faithful people that trained me. I even taught Sunday school there when I was about 17.
Yeah.
And had 8-year-old girls and about 3 or 4 because it was a small place. But so that was my
So
first.
you were, let me back up.
Back up.
I think it's worth noting. You said that when you were a teenager, you were teaching Sunday school,
That's
teaching
right.
children in Sunday school.
8 years old. Yeah, 8 years old.
So what would you say to young people who think, well, I can't do it. I can't do anything till I'm an adult?
Well, I just kind of fell into that, and I guess I had a little confidence back then that I could do it, because I was.
I just think that I think that sometimes we, as churches and even leaders, myself, we ought to be more proactive in getting our young people involved in doing
proud of
things.
the way you do that here.
Well, we need to do it more. We need to do it more. I mean, there's things our young people could do, and I just think that we need to be more intentional about that. But anyway, I regress.
But then I got to the age, it was time to graduate, and I was went to a small school. There's only 11 of us graduated.
11 graduated in your
7 girls and 4
that?
boys.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Cadle from Chowan College from Murfreesboro, North Carolina. I know you've heard of that, have you?
What was that again?
Murfreesboro.
I know where Murfreesboro is.
Okay, Chowan College.
Okay.
And he came down to school to see who could go. And 2 of the girls were going, and I told him I didn't know if I could go because of the money.
Right.
He came to my home and talked to my parents. And
Now, is that a Baptist school, or was it a Baptist school at that time?
Very Baptist, very
Okay.
Baptist. They kept it on lockdown. We had a den mother and everything.
Okay.
Like that. But so he came to my home and talked to my parents. And here's what people won't understand now: it's only $680 to go to college and stay on campus and eat.
A year or a semester?
A year.
Wow.
A year. And that was in 58.
Yeah.
And farmers didn't have that kind of money back then.
Yeah,
It was, So he came to my home and he gave me a $100 scholarship.
How about that?
For my grades. Thank goodness I got good grades.
Yeah.
My church gave me $100.
Yeah.
I left $480.
Yeah.
My dad sold hogs or pigs, whatever you want to call it, for me to be able to go. And he got me a job in the cafeteria.
How about
3
that?
times a day.
How about that?
So I didn't cook.
You worked your way through school.
Partly, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't work. I didn't cook, of course. Then we had people to do that. But what we did, it was just boys and me. I was the only girl. So they took care of me and the stuff I had to do.
Okay.
So we had, after we served, I served the meat because I was the first girl and I served the meat. And we did that. We had to clean the steam table and clean up the cafeteria. But that was a good year of my life because I was away from home. And it was just on my own and everything. And I was in the church there.
Right.
I had a boyfriend, of course, a football player.
Okay.
But we would go to church on Sunday morning, and I was in the YWAs there at
Okay.
the Baptist College. So
Right.
I didn't ever forget those people that trained me.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I went back to Hoskin, North Carolina, where my sister lived and stayed with her.
So is that near where you grew
Very
up?
near.
Okay.
Everything's real close. And I worked in a Hoskin department store just to have a job.
So how far were you from the beach over there?
Oh, we were close. Chowan River, we had Coleraine Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I spent a lot of time there in the summertime.
At the ocean beach.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you moved back over there where your sister was.
Where my sister was, and went to work at Hoskin department store.
What'd you study in college?
Business course.
Okay.
I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
Couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
The 4 years.
Yeah.
And so I just took a business course
Right.
because that's what we could afford.
Right.
And so Hosky had no opportunities for people. So my best friend had committed to go work with the FBI, and she was there. So I applied to the FBI. And so this is something you probably wouldn't know about me unless I told you. But I got accepted to the FBI, so I can't commit a crime because they got my fingerprints.
So you were a FBI agent.
Well, not an agent. I was a clerk typist.
My goodness. Did
But
you have to carry a gun?
No, I wasn't.
No.
We had to wear a badge in
Yeah.
the offices, though.
Wow.
We went to floor to floor.
Man, I'll have to be more careful around you now.
So, but I met my first husband and dated him twice, but I'd already made that commitment, so I left. And he was in the Navy in Norfolk, Virginia. A friend had brought him over as a blind date.
Right.
So he started writing. So I fulfilled my time there, which was about 6 months. And then I came back, and he finished up his tour with the Navy.
Okay.
1 year we lived in Virginia, very poor.
Uh-huh.
And from there, his home was in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Okay.
So that's where we located. And then I applied to the city of Fayetteville, and with that 1 year degree, I got into City Hall
Okay.
and ended up with a 30-year retirement.
In Fayetteville?
In Fayetteville, North
So
Carolina.
you lived in Fayetteville for 30 years.
From 1961 to 1983. 2014 when I moved here.
So you lived in Fayetteville till 2014.
Mhm.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know if you knew it or not. I pastored for 9 years in Laurinburg.
Yep.
So we would go up to Fayetteville quite regularly. We may have crossed paths.
We
Yeah.
lived on the north side of town where the college was.
Okay. Okay. We
Yeah.
went up there a few times. Usually our
Yeah.
trips were up there just to do some
Yeah.
shopping or something when we had a.
Floyd Penfield was my pastor there for
Okay.
many years.
Okay.
And so I, my neighbor across the street, I didn't have a driving license. She took me and my 2 little boys and to church. And I joined Cedar Falls Church in 1966.
Okay.
So, and in the meantime, in all this, I went to work for the city of Fayetteville in 1961, and had my first child in 62, another one 18 months later, 64. But the economy situation, I was caught in that situation where women and men both almost needed to work to make it. So I was working with 2 little boys,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I finished up that commitment. But I did a lot of things at Cedar Falls, and I'll tell you about my little history there. I started out holding the babies
Mm-hmm.
with the lady that worked with the babies. Then I worked with the lady that taught the 4 and 5-year-olds.
Right.
And then I went back and I taught the 2 and 3-year-olds. I
Mhm.
stayed out of my Sunday school class teaching to kids
Mm-hmm.
longer than I did in my class. But then later I taught the 4 and 5-year-olds, the most fun group I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
I had 12 kids and they're by myself.
Okay. Yeah.
Boy, they'll tell you stuff.
Yeah.
They will tell you stuff you don't tell their parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I enjoyed that, and from that I taught later on the 5th and 6th graders. And that's the highest I get. I don't want to teach adults. They
Okay.
know more than I do.
Yeah.
But I can tell you all about Jonah and the whale and
Yeah.
the giant and
Yeah.
all that stuff. But unfortunately, when my children got to be teenagers, I ended up being a divorced person.
Yeah, it's tough.
One person can't make a marriage, so
Mm,
after a year, we did get divorced.
mm,
But God looked after me so good. I met a man that was in the Air Force,
mm-hmm.
and I was 43, he was 48, and we got married in 1983, and he retired in 1984 with his 30 years military.
Oh, okay.
So, and he had 3 boys. I had 2, but they were all upper teenagers. You know,
Right.
they were grown, and his oldest son had just had an operation for a brain tumor when I met him, and no hair because his hair had already come out. He got over that, but they knew it was going to come back. So in 9 years, it did come back, and he had his second surgery. And from that surgery, he got infection in the site that they operated on. And he never walked again without holding onto a wall or a walker.
Right.
And so I ended up helping him get his Social Security stuff and everything. And he had to come live with us. They were tough years. So I needed to finish out my retirement.
Right.
So I was there with him one day, and I was using up a lot of sick leave and stuff. And the doorbell rang. I was sitting in my chair, and I said, Lord, what am I going to do here? I said, I need to finish this retirement, and I've got to take care of this boy. And he was in his 30s, early 30s at that point. So when I opened that door, it was an older gentleman standing there, Mr. Cade, and he had sold insurance with Robbie. And his name was Robert, but we called him Robbie. And I looked at him, I said, God has answered my prayer instantly. So I asked him, I said, what are you doing now? He said, I'm just working part-time over at the college mowing grass when they are, someone's out. I said, do you want a job? He said, what? I said, take care of Robbie for me while I work, and I'll leave you food here every day. He said, sure. And I said, how much? He said, $5 an hour. I said, you are hired.
Yeah.
Immediately. So I left food for him, and he had been used to taking care of his mother, so he knew how to handle that wheelchair that Robbie was.
How about that?
Took him to doctors for us, and take him out to eat, and Robbie would pay for it because I had gotten his Social Security.
Right.
But this young man passed away at 33, and so that was sad. But and then the second son joined the Air Force. His second son joined the Air Force, and he was in the military, of course. I just said he joined the Air Force, but he made lieutenant colonel 1 year. Found out the next year he had cancer. 2 years to live.
Yeah.
So he passed away at 48. So we've had cancer hit our family. Anyway, but my youngest son, Steve, he was in the Navy when I married Robert. But he's the one that brought me here. And my other son, Jeff, is still in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Okay.
Living.
Okay.
But so I still have 1 stepson and my 2 sons and about 7 grandchildren all total.
So your late husband.
Robert passed away in 2009.
Okay.
And he had some health complications with heart congestion.
Right.
And we had built a home in 2002 because at the time when he first got sick, we thought we were afraid he might lose a leg, and we were going to tri-level home, so we built a home that would accommodate him if that happened, but that never happened, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But he passed away in 2009, so my son got the wheels spinning. Mom needs to be here. I'm the one that's going to be looking after her and everything. So I came for Mother's Day. That was before you came here, and I heard Mike preach one time on Mother's Day that day, 2014.
Right.
It was in August. And that's the only time I heard him because he retired.
Yeah.
And then you came on board later, and that's when I joined after we got a permanent pastor.
Yeah.
I said, I'll join when we get a permanent pastor.
Yeah. You're like one of the first ones that joined after I moved here, I think.
I probably was.
Yeah.
I probably was. But I've had a spiritual journey, and I was a big part of Cedar Falls, and I've tried to be active here as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little more limited, a little older, so I do pass out bulletins at the front door sometimes, and I'm the president in my class, which I try to keep that rolling, and
Yeah, I'll never forget one Sunday I walked in and
I know what you're telling.
you were up there, and I was just in there shaking hands, and I think Lloyd had rung the bell over there. There's time for class start, and I'm still over here talking. And Barbara decided that in her own kind way, it was time for me to leave. So over the microphone for the class, she told the class, she said, Pastor Steve, when you leave, make sure you close the door behind you.
You know what you said to me?
I don't, what I say?
I'll get you back.
I'll get you back. And I'm doing it right now.
And you did, because I had to do the first announcement. When we started that, I said, uh-oh, he's paying me back.
When we started what?
The announcements. That was the first one on the announcements.
Oh, okay, for the video announcements.
I thought,
okay.
oh, he's paying me back.
Yeah.
And now you're getting me again.
I'm getting you again.
When is it going to end?
You reap what you sow, more than you sow, and later than you sow. So.
But my friend, I'm going to tell one more little thing, and I think we probably can wind it up unless you want to ask me something. My friend Betty came, and I was real famous for writing skits, acting crazy, and anytime they needed something done, it was Betty and me to do it. So
Betty was here at the church here?
She came and visited.
Okay, I think I met, yeah. Okay, I remember.
You met her,
yeah.
and she tattled on me. She told them that I could do that.
Yeah.
And you don't tell Carolyn Johnson that, because she
yeah, Carolyn likes to do that stuff herself.
Yeah,
we might need to get her and Gerald in here. What do you think?
I think so.
I think that'd be good.
I think so.
Yeah.
But
if y'all want to hear, if you want us to maybe get Carolyn and Gerald in here, why don't you send us a little message or something and let us know you'd like to see them interviewed. We'll see what kind of response we get from that.
But from there, I have been writing skits. Every time we have a potluck, I've got to write a skit. I said I'm the choreographer. And I don't know if this is a blessing or curse that God has given me, but I can come up with some crazy stuff.
Right.
And you've witnessed some of them. I've invited you to some.
I have.
And,
I blushed at a few of them too. So.
And the last one we had, I'm going to tell the people what we did. So it's the Jolly Seniors.
Yeah, Lyles, yeah.
Jolly Seniors.
Oh my goodness.
But I got to back up a little bit.
Okay.
Then I'll get into that
Okay.
part. The first Sunday, my son came with me. The second Sunday, I came by myself. And Louise Burgess, I got to tell that, she was sitting behind me.
Sweet Louise.
She hugged me and invited me to Sunday school. Well, that was right what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
The next Sunday, I was up front talking to Susie, where is Louise Burgess's class.
Right.
So she got one of the guys, and he brought me to the classroom. And so that was the start in Sunday school. And from there, Lois Dellinger got my phone number.
Okay.
Her husband had just passed away. And she called me that week. We kept getting together, and we became real close friends. And from that, the class is so warm. They really are. They are jolly seniors, and they love to have fun.
Yeah.
And when I came in with all the crazy stuff I do, it was just right down their alley. And the last thing that we had, you were there, it was Hee Haw theme. And we had Dolly Parton, we had Minnie Pearl, we had Kenny Rogers, and Bubba Barnes.
Yeah.
And
I remember all
it
that.
was a mess.
Yeah.
But it was fun. But they loved that. And I tell them you can't do it too often because I get out of ideas. So give me an idea and I'll spin it off and I'll write it up and do it. And and I think the next one I write, I'm going to write it up for you. And
My goodness.
Let you be in it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I could probably do that. I just, I don't know. I just remember Lyles, man. He seemed like he was really enjoying that Kenny Rogers role, didn't he?
Isn't he good? He's good. He's good.
Yeah.
He's good.
Wow.
But anything you want to ask me?
Well, let me ask you a couple questions here. What now you said that you came to Christ as a child, you went forward in a church,
when I was about 10.
But I think it's just important for us to always remind people going forward in church is a good thing, but that doesn't save you.
That's
and I just want people to hear you say that it's putting your faith in Christ and trusting Him as Lord and Savior, and that's what you did.
Yeah, I've had opportunity to witness lately.
Yeah.
I had a person to walk in my house and they said, I'm not worthy to go to church.
Mm.
I said,
Who is?
So I said, who do you think God wants in church? I said, we are the church anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, everybody needs to be there. You might hear something that you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
I said, God is in your heart. And that's where it is. And that's when I was 15. I was so emotional that night when I don't know how I pulled away from my family. They were going to one church and I was going to another, and with my grandfather. But that's how much that church meant to me. And those people, I just see them working there.
So Christ really changed your life after that?
Oh yeah. Those people there shaped me and taught me, showed
and that's
me
discipleship, isn't it?
how to be a Christian.
And that's what we call discipleship.
And that is service.
Yeah.
You got to get in there and get involved and be willing.
Yeah.
And do it. And one of the most difficult things they asked me to do at Cedar Falls was to teach divorce care.
The what?
Divorce care.
Ah, okay.
Well, I was a divorced person.
Right.
And I said, I don't want to relive that and have memories and be upset. But they give you all the literature, and I did good with it. I was. They wanted people that had been through it because they were more compassionate and knew what you were going through, and because that was a tough year for me. That year that we were separated and got divorced. Yeah. Yes. I always related to it like a death. It was a death of trust in someone and the love, that you had. Because we didn't have I wasn't married to an alcoholic or a drug. He was a police officer, as a matter of fact. Very good man. But he just, that period in his life, he just got a little mixed up. Yeah. And we ended up divorced. But I always said God took care of me and sent me a very good man. And that was family oriented and everything. Yeah. So I've been looked after. I don't look back on my life as all the hard stuff. I look back, it was life. Right. And God brought me through it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this before we wrap this up. What would you say to people that may watch this video? What would you say to them about how to just keep your mind in the right place? I mean, I know I've been preaching on this, but what would you say to them that you're doing to try to, I mean, this is challenging times. We're a little bit more isolated and all, but what are you doing to just keep your mind in the right place with the Lord and all?
Well, I keep up with what you're putting on Facebook for sure. I enjoyed my Sunday school teacher last Sunday, teaching the Sunday school class. I was worried.
He did a great job.
He did a great job, but Bill walks when he teaches.
Yeah.
He couldn't walk that day.
He talked about that beforehand. He said, this may be hard for me.
I wondered what his feet were doing underneath.
And we could have done that actually, but
no. Yeah. I wondered what his feet were doing underneath that desk.
Yeah, he's probably walking.
But he did a great job. He's a very effective teacher, and you don't know, but when you're in the workplace and everywhere, you're witnessing if you got your heart right. Because when I worked, people knew I was a Christian, and I didn't have to stand on the corner and preach it. Yeah. You don't cram it down people's throat. You just live it. And they see that in you, and they know you go to church.
That's certainly an important part of it. And we pray that God will give us those opportunities to verbalize it at some point.
And then I had a couple of friends there. They got into a divorce situation, and guess who they came to talk? And I have one that we just love each other now. Yeah. Because we'd cry together and talk together, and she said, you got me through that. Yeah. But it makes you feel humble when somebody tells you that. Right. Maybe I was a part of that and everything. So you just live it, and people see it, and I hope I'm being a good representation for my children, and my grandchildren. And, right. They know I come to church, and they don't interfere with that, and I'm going to pray for them every night. And I when they asked me to be on the prayer group, and I did, I pray that same prayer every night anyway, so it's nothing hard for me to commit to that.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And, and I would just say this, and I think you would agree with me that for our senior adults, I think that this is a time where our younger people, their adult children, their grandchildren, they're looking for some stability. And this is a time when our senior adults can show that they have stability because they're anchored in Christ. They're trusting in the Lord. And I just encourage you and our other senior adults. It doesn't mean that we pretend like there's no problem. There is a problem. But that problem does not mean that God has lost control of the situation.
That's right.
And I think, just like you alluded to there a moment ago, that just being consistent and showing others that our confidence in Christ does not wane. We still have peace in the midst of the storm. The storm's raging around us, but we've still got that peace because we trust that God's in control. And I appreciate your faithfulness and your walk, and just encourage you to keep doing that. And I appreciate you coming on today and doing this. I know it's going to be a great blessing to the people that watch it.
But prayer, they don't always get answered that day. Might not get answered later. They might not answer some. God might. But one prayer I'm just going to tell you about when I was separated from my husband and we were right near to divorce. I was there and I said, God, he's not coming back, and I'm tired of sitting on the fence. And I said, I'm praying for peace now in my heart. Steve, that was the most instant peace I ever got in my life. And I got myself up, dried them tears up, and I started getting out some. And a lot of times you'd be somewhere and you're still almost near to tears because you're still emotional from it. And but I just want to say that prayers can get answered quickly sometimes. Yeah. And that one it moved all on me. And I'm going to toss out one more thing if I have time. That's
fine, go ahead.
I do write poetry. I haven't written any recently, but I did publish a book in 1995. A real primitive book right here.
Harvest of Blessing. Here, let me see it real quick.
And I bought this to you.
Harvest. Oh, you brought this for me.
I bought that for you.
Hold up there where we can kind of see it there.
And
Harvest. I'm having a hard time getting it in the center. There we go. There we go. Okay.
But I had papers all over the house. I gathered them up, and I don't know how many poems is in here. It's a lot.
Right.
And with our secretary typed it up, and we got them all bound up, and I sold these books for $5 each.
Okay. Yeah.
For a project for the music ministry. Our music ministry wanted to build a living cross. You've heard of the singing Christmas trees,
right,
I know.
Right.
He wanted to build a living cross for Easter for us to get into.
Yeah.
And I made about $800 on these books.
Well, how about that?
And I gave that to the music ministry, and we built that cross. And I wrote there's a poem in here about that.
Yeah.
And so my poems here are mostly Christians poems. There's some for fun. Easter, and I got one I'm going to read just for fun.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's
real
short.
All right,
and I'm going to leave you with this book.
Okay.
This is a silly one I wrote.
All right.
But I thought maybe that would be better than
Okay, let's hear your poem.
It says, be prepared to do the time. There's an old bullfrog out in the pond, swinging from pad to pad. He is cheating on his lady frog and making her very sad. His bass croak turns the ladies on. They say that they're just putty in his hand. He leads them all to believe that he is a one-woman man. I have not heard his croaking lately. He has no time to court. His scorned ladies found him out and are suing for non-support. He stays very busy now and does not hop from pad to pad. There are too many little tadpoles swimming around and calling him dad.
Uh-oh.
And there is a little message here hidden in this silly rhyme. If you are a toad to the one you love, be prepared to do the time.
Oh my goodness.
That's one of the silliest one I wrote.
Oh,
but most of them are Christian.
Well, that's great.
But I wrote you a little inscription. Right.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
And if you get time to go
that.
through some of it, you might. And there's a lot of my farm life in there. You might enjoy reading where I came from.
Yeah. Well, how would you feel about maybe just having a word of prayer for everybody in their church?
You want me to do the
yeah.
prayer?
Do you
Okay.
mind doing that?
I don't mind doing that.
Okay. Why don't you pray for everybody before
Okay.
we end?
Our most gracious Heavenly Father, I am so thankful for all my blessings that I have received over the years. You have blessed me richly, and I appreciate everything you've done. And God, we are in troubled times now, but we are going to get through it. We just got to look to you, and hopefully that it'll be lifted, and we will be able to continue our Christian life as we were before and gather together. But God, we can do that in our homes also. We can keep this going. We can stay connected. We can call. We just remember everybody in prayer. The main thing I'm saying here that we need to pray and pray hard. There have been times in the past that we've had troubled times, and we've always come through. And dear Lord, you'll bring us through this. And dear God, thank you for all your blessings. I love you. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, Barbara, thank you for coming in today. I know it's going to be a blessing to a lot of people, and I would just say to our people, let's not forget, God is still sovereign, Jesus is still Lord, and we still have a great commission. And I just want to encourage you every day, be thinking about who can I be a blessing to today. Jesus came not to be served, but to serve. He is our example. And it doesn't matter what's going on in our world, we are still called to follow that example. And I just challenge you right now, when you start feeling a little discouraged or maybe a little depressed, you need to pray right, think right, like I talked about my sermon Sunday. Pray right, think right, and serve right. And we need to try to get our eyes off of ourselves and focus on how we can be a blessing to others. So thank you for tuning in today. And if you have any questions or there's anything we can do to serve you, please do not hesitate to contact us. And if you're maybe not a part of Westport Baptist Church, you can reach out to us through our website, www.westport.church, or you can send an email to info@westport.church. God bless you.